We're so lucky to have found this person. He's been an invaluable resource for us. One Stop's been terrific to work with, and he takes great pride in his work.
We've gotten bigger as we've expanded through the western United States, and the One Stop has supplied us with entry-level employees with skill sets that we could not find out in the open market without interviewing for weeks.
Our business, Help at Home Senior Care, provides non-medical in-home care for the elderly. The One Stop Career Center has helped us recruit qualified caregivers to help them in their home. We encourage other companies to take advantage of the One Stop Career Center. It's really helped our business.
Welcome to Cafe Community. I'm your host, Cheryl Noble, and we're so glad you could be with us tonight. We have a special program that will look at our local economic and business development, where the funding is and how you can get the money, and where the resources and support services are. We'll also look at how all of this impacts us as a community. My three guest panelists are from regional, county, and city organizations, and they'll offer us their insights and perspectives from those three different levels. It's going to be a dynamic, lively, and informative panel discussion, so let's get started. My guests tonight are on my left, Brent Smith, the CEO of Sierra Economic Development Corporation. In the middle is Gil Matthew, the acting CEO with Nevada County Economic Resource Council. He's also the owner of Sierra Solar Systems. And on the end is Gene Albaugh. He is the city manager for Nevada City. A great panel, and thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
So let's start with, what do you do? Brent, take it away.
Well, I'm glad to be back, Cheryl. Thanks for the invitation. I still have the fondest memories of when I was here just a few months ago and had the opportunity to share with your audience something about Sierra Economic Development Corporation. We're a regional nonprofit. We're a private corporation. Yes. We're not a government entity, and we do three things. We provide support to the jurisdictions, much like we do for Gene in Nevada City, for the economic development expertise that they need and typically don't have with their small staffs. Second, we are small business trainers. We provide a variety of classes on subjects that small businesses need to be successful. And third, and perhaps most importantly, we're direct business lenders. We borrow money from various sources, and we turn around and make loans directly to businesses at rates that they can afford.
Okay, direct lender.
Direct lender.
Okay, that's always good to know. Gil, tell us what you do. You do a lot, which I can see.
Well, I'm currently acting CEO for the Economic Resource Council. That's because I had tendered my resignation, and they've not yet replaced it with a new CEO. And we're hopeful that that'll happen within the next week or so.
All right. So you have nothing to announce yet on Cafe Community, right?
No, I'm not ready to announce that.
All right.
For that 3 years that I was the CEO at the ERC, we were involved in economic development with three main things that we were trying to do. Ultimately, it's about jobs, jobs, jobs. And how do you do that? We can't create jobs, but we can create employers. So it was a combination of retention of those companies that were here, attraction of companies that weren't here, and growing companies and creating companies out of the ground, utilizing resources from people like SEDCOR and Nevada City.
Right. Okay, good. And Gene, tell us, city manager.
Thank you for having me, Cheryl. I am the city manager for the city of Nevada City. One important thing that Gil forgot to mention is this. It's very important because there'll be huge fines involved with this, Cheryl.
Okay, huge fines.
Yes. I am a member of the Nevada City Rotary Club, the 49er Breakfast Rotary Club, and I'm a proud member of that. Gil is also a member of that club, and I expect that he'll be in trouble at our next meeting.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. As far as economic development goes...
And it's on tape, so they can go back and hear it.
It is on tape. We struggling city, small city. We rely pretty much on the various activities. We've been very fortunate this past year in that we had the Amgen come to our town, which generated a lot of marketing around the world, in fact. And that was beneficial. So that quarter saw some increases in the sales tax that comes in, which means that the businesses are doing a pretty good job. They're surviving during this time. The other thing that has been long-term is this time of year, the Christmas card is played on Hallmark, and you cannot imagine the marketing that means and the phone calls we get over that. A lot of questions like, is that church really in Nevada City?
Yeah.
And yes, it is. And,
And they've repeated that.
Yeah, 5 or 6 times this year. Yeah. And I always feel really good when I watch that. But, yeah, so we do rely. We rely a lot on Gil's help. We work with SED. One of our council members, Sally Harris, is on the SED board. I'm an alternate to that board, so we're as best we can be involved with economic development for a small town.
Right. And keep the attraction coming in, as we can't pay for advertising like that with Hallmark and
you cannot.
Even Amgen.
Yeah.
So all that's invaluable. Well, I wanted to start on, we were talking before the program that what I perceived as good news was just noticing in the union all of the fictitious business statements that have come out. I mean, it was almost a whole page of which is the first start to kind of starting up a business. You need to take out your business name. And Janelle tossed that for a response to you because a lot of them was Nevada City addresses of startups.
Well,
so hopefully good news.
It is good news. We seem to fill vacancies rather quickly when they're there. We also have a Incubator Program that is funded there for startup businesses. So that is going on the 3rd floor of the Stonehouse here in Nevada City.
Sierra Commons.
And they utilize all those services, but also services at the SED and ERC, as well as what the city has available to them. One of the things we have available, we were successful in getting an economic development grant for $300,000. Getting people to come in and take advantage of that has been a slow process. I think a lot of people are a little reluctant to borrow money when they don't know how they're going to pay it back in a time when there's not a lot of energy or enthusiasm or positive thinking going on. But that's changing.
Well, and that was one of my questions. Brent, I'll ask, all of you can answer, but what's typically overlooked then in a startup? As you said, they sometimes hesitate to take out money, which you need for startup, but what are some of the things that they overlook then in just launching the business or their business plan?
I considered this question before. We had been chatting, and actually I have 3 points I want to make, but I want to verify Gene's observation about business owners being reluctant to borrow. We actually participated in a survey this last year. We surveyed over 200 businesses. They were in Placer County and El Dorado County and Alpine County, but I think they're still indicative. Those are still rural markets, not dissimilar to Nevada County. And we found an overwhelming, a 98% response rate to the question about whether they anticipated borrowing in the next year. And the answer was no. Oh. Now, it surprised us that the response was so firm, so definite. No, we're not going to do it, but indicative of where we were in the economy at the time. I think this deal about more fictitious name statements is an indication of how the economy now finally is starting to shift. We used the word before about a delayed reaction, that it may have been over the last 18 to 24 months. People were still harboring a hope that something was going to happen, things were going to turn around, those who had been laid off or downsized were going to be returning to their jobs, and reality finally has set in. People have used resources as much as they can without thinking, I've got to do something different now, and that may be what we're seeing. Classically, in economic downturns, that is what happens. People who lose their jobs turn to that interest they've always harbored in the back of their head about doing a business of their own. It just seems to have been delayed this time, and now we're finally beginning to see that. As far as startups are concerned, frankly, I have 3 simple messages. The 3 biggest errors that we see time and time again, first, is not being honest with themselves. Being in business for yourself is hard. It's the hardest thing that I know of, quite frankly. And unfortunately, people turning to running a business or wanting to run a business on their own without examining themselves and whether they have what it takes to run a business themselves too often results in business failures. And as a part of that consideration, we would urge them, don't forget your family, because they're going to pay for your lessons just as much as you do, in terms of economics certainly, but also in the wear and tear on you and your social life, or should I say lack thereof. So know yourselves first. Second, know your business. These are hard times. We've lost a lot of businesses. There's been a good deal of consolidation. And so you need to be very careful about what business you're going to be in and what business you're not going to be in light of that potential competition. And the third thing relates, quite frankly, to the competition, and that is know your market. We see that, of course, SedCorp is one of the very few resources available for startup lending, for those who want to start a new company to borrow money to help that process. And so we see them bring their business plans in, and we go through them very carefully, and we see some very unrealistic assumptions made, where assumptions shouldn't be made about the market where that business is going to be operating. They need to know their competition like the back of their hands.
Okay, and so speaking of know your business skill, maybe you can answer. Well, you all know though. What are the business trends now? What is a good business to go into? To know your business, but know then where there's a niche. Know what's growing, what's evolving. What are the trends? What are the more sure-footed business? We know healthcare is one because we're all kind of, in a few years at least, several years getting there. But what are your thoughts on kind of some more solid businesses?
I think you have to divide that question up into two parts. Well, one is the entrepreneur, who's the individual who might start some company. The second would be a collection of people who raise capital to go after some market that's not met. And those are really kind of two different types of tax there. And we're going to talk generally about the entrepreneur, the fellow who has a great idea. Where is the market that's good? Healthcare is excellent right now. There's still room in the anything in the creative line. That's one of the things the United States has capitalized on for years, and I think that we can continue to do, and that is what requires true creativity. And I think that's an area where you could find a foothold. I would really like to echo what Brent said about know your competition, know yourself. And the thing that I would see most often was an incomplete or an unrealistic business plan. Because you have a business plan doesn't mean that it's good. Find someone who will read that business plan and be the ogre who will ask the embarrassing questions. How do you figure you're going to sell 12 cases when you've only sold one? What's going to change? So those would be my answers.
And within the healthcare, there's so many affiliated services and associated services. I mean, there's just so many components to that with the healthcare. So that opens up a broad spectrum of a line of business.
Along with that, though, Cheryl, there are other opportunities besides healthcare in our county.
Okay.
Energy is wide open.
Yes, thank you.
Conservation, there's all.
No commercial. No commercial.
Go ahead and build him one, will you?
Do you happen to
Lost
know
control
anybody
already,
from
Cheryl.
No, 12 minutes into the program.
The other thing, though, is back to the business plan. And once you're by that stage, getting a business location that makes sense.
Okay.
You know, too many times they set up in a location that there's not the traffic, the drive-by, or any of that, and they're destined to fail.
Yeah.
And location's another very important thing.
Right. And the energy, and of course Sierra Solar Systems we know of.
That's
but the green,
advertising.
it's subtle. It's underhanded advertising. Energy and the green energy. It's not just energy efficiency, but green.
Well, right, and water, like water conservation. The law says by such and such time we're going to have to conserve water, and so there's all kinds of devices out there in that area to make that happen.
Yeah.
And going back to energy, you've got all kinds of operators. Solar, like
Right.
what's his name here mentioned, and But there's other things too. Wind opportunities. We have the hydroelectric here. We've got water flowing down to generate electricity.
Yeah.
So it goes on and on there.
Right. Can you speak to that a little bit more then, Gil, since...
Yes, I really think that energy is going to be a topic that's going to continue to increase in importance to all of us.
Yeah.
And that's not just solar, but I'm talking about microhydro and wind energy, and then the conservation portion of that. One of the things we look at, not to advertise it, but when we go to look at a solar system is how can we help your house use less energy so you need less panels? And that's an important issue.
Yeah.
We want to do an energy survey of your home or your business. So there's a lot of opportunity for people who are, again, creative, who can come up with those devices, as Gene said, that can begin to minimize the use of water, electricity, fuel, put our creative brains to work, and there's places to get footholds.
Okay. All good, enlightened. You can see I'm taking as many notes as possible. Let's go back to the funding, which is important, but yet people aren't taking advantage of it for whatever reason. They're concerned about the payback, or they're feeling like the economy is going to turn around, or I got my market under control and it's just going to take off. What's the process for an application? How long a time frame? Perhaps somebody really needs the seed money, and that's what they need just to launch this, because they need maybe equipment or new computer system to work their software and their programs. What's the application process and the time frame, and how long does it take?
Cheryl, you're asking the broader question, actually, by inference anyway, about sources of funding for any small business, including for startup a small business. And I do a class, and I've lost count now. I think it's something like 26 different sources that I've identified by there. And certainly we would encourage any startup especially to consider those sources of funding that are going to be least costly to them, starting with reaching into their own savings. But when it comes time, we would want them to look at commercial opportunities, because ultimately establishing a relationship with a bank on a business basis, not the personal checking account and savings, that kind of thing, is going to serve them well. The problem we're seeing in the market right now, of course, is that because of increased regulation and a number of other factors, the commercial market for capital has gotten pretty tight. What used to be a good credit score floor at 700 FICO score is now 750. What used to be a floor for commercial loans at 50,000 is now 100,000 or 150,000. So an entrepreneur wanting to start up a business looking for only $50,000 to $75,000 may not be able to get that at the bank, especially if their credit is a little challenged. So that in part is why SEDCORP exists as a regional economic development entity and providing the direct lending we do. For us, the process is easy. We have our application form online, and all they need to do is download it and then begin to fill it in and attach the associated documents. We encourage them to call early to our office, talk to our loan department. Either of the folks who work in there are very nice people. They don't bite, and we're there to help.
It's great.
And then just follow through with the process. Again, a key here is that we consider ourselves personal lenders. And where banks, for a lot of good reasons, pretty much have to be formula-driven because they have regulators and they have shareholders and the rest, we really want to get to know our borrowers. And so challenged credit scores aren't necessarily a challenge for us. Flexible terms aren't necessarily a challenge for us. And I thank you for the opportunity to be able to give that commercial, but the point in fact is we exist for that purpose. We're certified by the Small Business Administration, certified by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to help small businesses in exactly that way.
Yeah. Well, a couple things I recently learned of, and Gene, I spoke to you about this, to discover and learn that there is a community development grant program right in Nevada City. Who knew?
I did, but that ain't.
Yeah, most.
You don't.
Yeah, we have advertised.
You're supposed to know that.
That's right.
We do that through the Chamber of Commerce, so they have that information. But we've run ads in the paper. We're online or on our website, the city's website. But getting people to come in and fill out the paperwork,
Right.
which is an onerous burden, really.
It
but
is,
it's necessary if you expect to receive funding. So that's why. But yeah, we do have it. It's low interest. It's there.
for very local business. I mean,
It
right,
is. It's
right
for
there.
Nevada City businesses.
Yeah. I know, like so many other people, I've thought about starting up business. I mean, it always sounds appealing. It is hard work. Producing a show is hard work. So, but then you kind of get there's so many components to it. There's the details, the vision, as you said, and knowing the market. A very solid plan is hard to put together. And Gil, maybe this is for Economic Resource Council with regards to the support, their sounding boards. I know all of you offer that, but is that a good contact for somebody like me to say, okay, bounce my ideas around? Like you say, you need an ogre.
Yes, one of the things that we did the last 3 years at the ERC was we were very open about inviting people in to bring your idea in, come and sit down with me, spend an hour, and talk about what it is you want to do, and then get some direction about that. And then what we did as a service to those people is there are many templates out there for business plans, and they all work pretty well till you get down to the financials. And most people are not financially oriented, and so the ERC would contribute to building those financials for people. So I built many financials, 3-year performance statements for them, and then would ask the embarrassing questions. How do you think you're going to sell 10 cases when you've only sold one? And that's something the ERC will continue to do under whatever new leadership that is. One of the things I will personally do is continue to be a resource for them on a volunteer basis to put together financial packages, those 3-year pro forma statements that Brent is going to require you have in your business plan.
So when I open the bank of Gene Albaugh, we need those kind of financial statements.
That's right.
And I say that kind of in a humorous vein, but another source, an important source for startups is other family members, like dad or grandpa, going to help somebody out. And the pressure there, I got to pay them back, but if you get in a burden, they can become good mentors to that person that's in the startup phase.
The guardian angel,
so to speak.
So to speak. And what percentage of funding of the applicants do get funded, Brent? I mean, like half or 75% or higher, or?
That's a great question.
I know.
But but I don't want to be misleading. It depends on where you start. I mean, I could say probably out of 100 inquiries we get, we only make 2 or 3 loans. But you narrow down from the inquiries to the number who actually submit an application, and then the number of those who actually submit a complete application, and those are not the same, I assure you.
You mean the complete, the I's were dotted, the T's and the financials?
You provide all the information that's needed to be able to provide a clear picture of where that individual is, what their credit record has been, what their plan is for being able to repay. Just because we're a regional nonprofit organization doesn't mean that we don't take the same attitude that banks do. I mean, we've got risk. We borrow the money that we then turn around and loan out to others. So getting a complete application is going to be required from us just as it would from any other lender. Of the number of complete applications submitted to us, we probably fund about half of them, which is encouraging. And it means, of course, that there's a self-selection process leading to that point. An awful lot of folks, in many cases, with our encouragement, doing that self-analysis. Do I have what it takes to run a business? Do I understand my business? Do I understand my market? conclude no to one or more of those answers, and they self-select to go do something else.
Or,
May I just add into that, one of the things I discovered when helping people put the business plan and the financials together was they often did not realize what quantity of money they really needed.
yes.
And under
good
what
point.
circumstances they needed that money. And so when you get down to the financial statements and you're running 3 years into the future, you begin to get a better understanding of the finance requirement that you're going to have that someone like Sedcor is going to have to fund.
Right, right.
Indeed.
That's, yeah, very
And
good
we
point.
will ask for not just financial statements in a form canned kind of approach, but we want to see a cash flow analysis and a break-even analysis. We want to understand with that entrepreneur, with that applicant, when they expect to be profitable, when they're going to repay their
Yeah.
debts and when they're going to go from there, and do they have enough cash on hand, working capital, to be able to get to that point?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or are they going to be one of those way too many businesses that are profitable and go out of business?
Yeah, kind
And
of.
there is such a thing.
Right, right. Well, we're coming down to our last couple minutes, unfortunately, but I did want to touch on, there's so many people in our community retired, they're not really looking to start up. How does this impact and affect and benefit our community with the economic business development, your services? I mean, you know, making this a viable community.
To your community, I would say one of my favorite sayings, Albert Einstein had a philosophy of in adversity there is opportunity. This condition that I described before, where we've got surviving businesses that have been husbanding their resources and saying that I'm not going to borrow anything for at least the next year, that was a year ago. Now we're at a point where hopefully we're going to begin to see some light at the end of the tunnel, and I would say to those who are in business, carpe diem. You know, is this the time to get your head up, look around, and see about expanding your product line or seizing product share from one of your competitors who's not so forward-thinking, perhaps? And if you're an entrepreneur, is this the time to begin to position yourself, to open your company, and catch that leading edge of the wave as the economy recovers?
Which will be good for the community.
You bet.
Bill, real quickly.
I want to speak
For the
about
community?
I want to speak about the retirement community because they happen to be a lot of my friends are in that group. A vigorous economy works well for them also because that brings more things to the community, more places to eat, more places to take the dry cleaning, more drugstores. So a vibrant community serves the retirement community. And we're fortunate. The retirement community here of the people over the age of 60 represent about 27% of the community. Very high percentage.
Yes.
And they're very generous in terms of supporting the nonprofits.
Right.
And they really need to be
That's
celebrated.
right. Okay, we've got a few seconds. Gene, your response.
Well, we were
Community.
talking earlier about bringing those people into some sort of investor organization within our counties that can assist along the ways. They have the resources. It's idle cash. You know, I can't think of anything I need in my home that I need to buy unless something breaks down. And we got to bring those people out and support that
investing.
yeah.
Very good. On that very good news and high note, we are going to close out the program, and it went so fast. So thank you to my guests, Brent Smith, CEO, Sierra Economic Development Corporation, Gil Matthew, Acting CEO of Nevada County Economic Resource Council and owner of Sierra Solar Systems, and Gene Elbow. And Gene Elbow, City Manager, Nevada City, and thank you so much for being with us. We had a great, inspiring panel and hope it was informative to you. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Wash me down, okay, and I'm gone.